What if you could see your own funeral and nobody came? What if you could watch your children curse your name, your wife celebrate your death, and your own mother refuse to shed a single tear for you? This is the terrifying story of Chief Obiora Maduka, a man who had everything money could buy, but nothing that truly mattered. A man who was given a second chance that most people only dream about. A chance to fix everything before it was too late. But here's the question that will haunt you by the end of this story. If you were shown your future today, would you have the courage to change? Stay with me, because what happened to Chief Obiora will shake you to your very core. In the bustling city of Lagos, where the rich drive past the poor without a second glance, where skyscrapers kiss the clouds while slums drown in floodwater, there lived a man feared by thousands, Chief Obiora Maduka. He was not a politician, he was not an armed robber, he was something far more dangerous, a businessman without a conscience. At 52 years old, Chief Obiora owned 14 properties across Nigeria, 3 hotels in Abuja, a shipping company in Port Harcourt, and enough money to buy anything and anyone. But there was something terribly wrong with Chief Obiora. He was empty. Behind those expensive agbadas and that booming laugh at parties, behind those handshakes with governors and senators, behind that gleaming Range Rover with tinted windows, there was nothing. No love, no kindness, no soul. His workers called him the Iron Man behind his back, not because he was strong, but because he was cold. Cold like metal left in the Harmattan wind. Chief Obiora had stepped on countless people to climb his ladder of success. He had cheated his own brother out of their father's inheritance. He had fired pregnant women from his companies without a single naira as compensation. He had bribed, he had lied, he had destroyed families, all in the name of profit. But he didn't care. "This is Lagos," he would always say, adjusting his gold wristwatch. "If you're not eating others, you're being eaten. It's survival of the fittest." His wife, Adaizi, had stopped loving him 15 years ago. She stayed only for the money, sleeping in a separate room, speaking to him only when necessary. His 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, had learned early that their father's love came with conditions. Excel in school, bring him honor, and maybe, just maybe, he would notice them. Even his own mother, Mama Obiora, an 80-year-old woman living in their ancestral village in Anambra, had given up praying for her son. She had watched him transform from a cheerful boy who shared his food with neighbors to a monster who forgot her birthday for 7 years straight. But Chief Obiora didn't see any of this. He was too busy counting his money. Little did he know that everything was about to change. It happened on a Friday evening, just as the sun was painting the Lagos sky in shades of orange and purple. Chief Obiora was being driven home from a meeting where he had just closed a deal that would make him 200 million naira richer. He was in the back seat of his Mercedes, drinking expensive whiskey and congratulating himself when his phone rang. It was his daughter, Chiamaka. She was crying. "Papa, please, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Chief Obiora cut her off. "Whatever it is, tell your mother. I'm busy." He ended the call without waiting for her response. But then, something happened that would change his life forever. As his driver approached the 3rd mainland bridge, a trailer loaded with bags of cement suddenly lost control. The massive vehicle swung wildly across the road, smashing through the median barrier, heading directly toward Chief Obiora's car. Time seemed to slow down. Chief Obiora saw the headlights of the trailer growing larger and larger. He heard his driver scream. He felt the impact. metal crushing metal, glass shattering like rain, his body being thrown around like a rag doll. And then, darkness. Complete, absolute darkness. Chief Obiora floated in that darkness for what felt like an eternity. He could not see, could not hear, could not feel. It was as if he had been erased from existence. And then, slowly, light began to appear. But this was no ordinary light. It was pale, cold, and filled with something that made his spirit tremble with fear. He found himself standing in a church. But not just any church. It was the same church where he had been married to Adeze 30 years ago. The same church where his children had been christened. The pews were filled with people dressed in black. It was a funeral. Chief Obiora looked toward the front of the church and felt his blood freeze. There was a coffin, and on a banner above it was his face, surrounded by flowers. This was his funeral. Chief Obiora tried to scream, but no sound came out. He tried to run, but his feet would not move. He was forced to watch, forced to witness what would become of his life. The pastor stood up to speak, and what he said shattered Chief Obiora's heart. "We are gathered here today to bury Chief Obiora Maduka, a man of great wealth." The pastor paused. He seemed to struggle to find anything else positive to say. "May his soul rest in peace." That was it. No stories of kindness, no tales of generosity, no memories of love. Chief Obiora looked at the congregation, desperate for a sympathetic face. What he saw destroyed him. His wife, Adeze, sat in the front row with a blank expression. No tears, no sadness, just emptiness. She kept checking her phone, as if counting the minutes until she could leave. His eldest son, Chukwudi, sat beside her with his arms crossed. His face was hard with anger. His second son, Tobechukwu, hadn't even bothered to show up. And his daughter, Chiamaka, the one he had ignored just before the accident, she was weeping. But not tears of grief. These were tears of anger, tears of regret for a relationship that never was. "He never loved us," Chiamaka whispered to her mother. "He never even tried." Chief Obiora felt something hot streaming down his face. He was crying, truly crying, for the first time in 40 years. But it got worse. He was pulled from the church and found himself standing in a courtroom. His children were fighting, screaming at each other over his properties, his money, his possessions. The love of a father could have held them together. But he had given them nothing to hold on to. The vision shifted again. Now he was in his village, standing outside his mother's small house. Through the window, he could see her lying in bed, fragile and weak. A neighbor sat beside her, holding her hand. "Mama, your son has been buried today," the neighbor said gently. Mama Obiora's response made Chief Obiora fall to his knees. She simply nodded, her face expressionless. "I lost my son many years ago. The man they buried today was a stranger." Chief Obiora screamed. He screamed until his throat burned, until his spirit felt like it would shatter into a million pieces. He had spent his entire life chasing money, and in the end, even his own mother did not mourn him. And then, just when he thought it was over, one final vision appeared. He saw himself, not as a wealthy businessman, but as a spirit, trapped in darkness, unable to move on, unable to rest, carrying the weight of every life he had destroyed, every heart he had broken, every chance he had wasted. This was his eternity. "No!" Chief Obiora screamed. "Please, give me another chance. I'll change. I swear, I'll change." His voice echoed through the darkness, unanswered. And then, light. Blinding, brilliant, warm light. Chief Obiora gasped and opened his eyes. Machines beeped around him. The smell of antiseptic filled his nostrils. A woman in a nurse's uniform rushed to his side. He's awake. The patient is awake. Chief Obiora was alive. He was in a hospital bed at Lagos University Teaching Hospital. According to the doctors, he had been in a coma for 17 days. The accident had nearly killed him. His heart had stopped 3 times on the operating table. But somehow, against all medical logic, he had survived. But the Chief Obiora who woke up that day was not the same man who had entered that car. The first thing he did was ask for his phone. His hands trembled as he dialed Chiamaka's number. "Papa?" Her voice was suspicious, guarded. "My daughter," Chief Obiora said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Whatever you wanted to tell me that day, I'm listening now. I will always listen." There was silence on the other end, then crying. Not tears of anger this time, but tears of shock, and the faintest flicker of hope. Chiamaka visited him that evening. She told him she had been pregnant and scared, not knowing how to tell him. She had been terrified of his judgment. Chief Obiora held his daughter and wept like a baby. He promised to support her. He promised to be there for his grandchild, and for the first time, he meant it. But he didn't stop there. The following weeks saw a transformation that shocked everyone who knew Chief Obiora. He called his brother, the one he had cheated 20 years ago. He begged for forgiveness, crying on the phone like a child. He transferred half of his properties to his brother's name, restoring what he had stolen. He went to the office and personally apologized to every employee he had mistreated. Those he had fired unjustly, he tracked down and offered compensation. Real money, not empty promises. He traveled to his village to see his mother. When he walked through her door, Mama Obiora stared at him like she was seeing a ghost. "Mama," Chief Obiora said, kneeling before her on the mud floor. "I am sorry for everything. I was lost, but I want to come home now. I want to be your son again." Mama Obiora's eyes filled with tears. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, slowly, she placed her wrinkled hand on his head. "My son," she whispered, "you have finally woken up." Over the following months, Chief Obiora became unrecognizable. He sold 3 of his hotels and used the money to build a free hospital in his village. He established scholarships for children who could not afford school fees. He paid school fees for 200 children in Lagos alone, children he had never met and would never meet. He reconciled with his wife, Adayeze. It was not easy. There were years of hurt to heal. But for the first time, he was willing to do the work. He was willing to listen. He was willing to change. His sons were slower to forgive. Chukwudi refused to speak to him for almost a year. Tobechukwu hung up every time he called. But Chief Obiora did not give up. He kept calling. He kept trying. He kept showing up, even when doors were slammed in his face. Slowly, very slowly, his family began to see that this change was real. By the time Chief Obiora's grandchild was born, a beautiful baby girl named Chisom, his family was whole again. Not perfect, but whole. The dinner table that had once been filled with silence now echoed with laughter. And every night before bed, Chief Obiora would close his eyes and remember that vision. He would remember the funeral where nobody cried. He would remember his mother's words. "I lost my son many years ago." Those memories kept him humble. Those memories kept him generous. Those memories reminded him that tomorrow is never promised, and the only thing we truly leave behind is how we made people feel. 7 years after the accident, Chief Obiora passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was surrounded by his wife, his children, his grandchildren, and his mother. Now 95 years old, but still strong. His funeral was nothing like the one he had seen in his vision. The church was overflowing with people. Family, friends, villagers, employees, and hundreds of strangers whose lives he had touched. Person after person stood up to share stories of his kindness. "He paid my school fees," said one young doctor. "I am who I am because of Chief Obiora." "He saved my family," said a woman holding a baby. "When we had nothing, he gave us everything." His daughter Chiamaka stood up last. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion. "My father was not always a good man, but he became one. And that is the greatest lesson he ever taught me. That it is never too late to change. It is never too late to love." As his casket was lowered into the ground, his mother, the woman who had once said she lost her son years ago, stood weeping at the graveside. "My son came home," she whispered. "My son finally came home." And somewhere in the great beyond, Chief Obiora Maduka's soul was finally at peace. Here is the truth that this story teaches us, a truth so powerful that it could change your life if you let it. You are not defined by who you were yesterday. You are defined by who you choose to be today. It doesn't matter how many mistakes you have made. It doesn't matter how many people you have hurt. It doesn't matter how lost you have become. As long as there is breath in your lungs, there is still time. Time to apologize. Time to forgive. Time to love. Time to change. Chief Obiora was given a second chance through a terrifying vision. But you don't need a vision. You don't need a near-death experience. You already know, deep in your heart, the things you need to fix, the people you need to call, the words you need to say. The question is, will you wait until it's too late? Or will you start today? Because here's the thing about borrowed time. You never know when the loan is due. So what are you waiting for?